Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel, Canada Immigration. We hope you're doing great. In this video, we will talk about a new era for Canadian immigration, key changes in 2024. The year 2024 marked a pivotal moment for Canada's immigration policies, ushering in a wave of transformative changes that will impact aspiring residents for years to come. With new regulations, updated programs, and shifting priorities, Canada's approach to immigration has evolved, reflecting both global trends and domestic needs. As the country adapts to an increasingly interconnected world, these changes present fresh opportunities and challenges for those looking to make Canada their home. In this article, we'll explore the key shifts in Canada's immigration landscape and what they mean for future immigrants. How 2024 changed immigration to Canada forever, a nation at crossroads. In 2024, Canada faced unprecedented challenges, shifting the dynamics of its immigration policies and transforming the country's future in ways not seen in generations. The economic, social, and infrastructural pressures that mounted throughout the year made it clear that the nation had reached a tipping point. Economic conditions worsened, public sentiment grew increasingly hostile, and the government was forced into drastic changes to restore balance. This year marked the beginning of a new era in Canada's immigration policy, a year that might change immigration forever. Economic struggles, the start of Canada's economic squeeze. By 2024, Canada had been grappling with a series of economic challenges. The Canadian dollar had slipped to its lowest level in 5 years, and inflation was running rampant. Everyday groceries felt like luxury items for many families, forcing nearly 2 million Canadians to turn to food banks for assistance. In addition, housing costs surged, deepening the crisis for those already struggling with high living expenses. The housing market, once a symbol of Canadian prosperity, took a drastic turn for the worse. Homeownership rates fell below 66%, a significant drop from the peak of 69% just a decade ago. This was especially alarming for younger Canadians, where less than 40% of those under 35 could afford to buy a home, with many urban areas becoming completely out of reach. In major cities like Toronto and Vancouver, the dream of homeownership seemed increasingly unattainable. The situation became dire. It was now required to have an income of over $300,000 per year just to qualify for a mortgage. As frustration and despair grew, Canadians turned to blame, and the issue of immigration quickly became a focal point of public discourse. Immigration, a convenient scapegoat for a nation's struggles. In the midst of this economic turmoil, political opposition began to focus on immigration as the root cause of the nation's woes. The country, which had long been proud of its welcoming immigration policies, was now seeing over 60% of Canadians express concern that the nation was taking in too many immigrants. This marked a sharp shift in public opinion, as immigration had traditionally been seen as a core strength of Canadian society. Canada's immigration numbers had been steadily increasing since the early 2000s, but the real acceleration came in the years following the pandemic. In 2023, Canada welcomed a record 471,000 new permanent residents, a significant surge that represented 1.2% of the total population. When considering the total population growth, the numbers were even more dramatic, around 1 million people in total. However, this sharp increase in population growth raised concerns about the strain on Canada's already stressed infrastructure and public services. To better understand why immigration numbers ballooned, we need to examine Canada's economic response to the pandemic. Like many other nations, Canada faced the looming threat of a recession in the wake of COVID-19. With millions of Canadians losing their jobs and the economy teetering, the government's response was to boost immigration, particularly targeting young, motivated workers from developing countries. The government's rationale was simple: to fill the labor shortages caused by the pandemic, bring in workers who would contribute to the economy, and shore up the nation's finances. International students, who paid significantly higher tuition fees than domestic students, were seen as a financial boon. By 2022, international students contributed nearly $40 billion to Canada's economy, providing essential tax revenue. But while these measures helped stave off a recession and seemed to fill labor gaps, they came with unforeseen consequences. Immigration surged well beyond Canada's traditional intake numbers, straining housing, healthcare, and infrastructure. The result was that Canada's rapid growth revealed the cracks in its system, which had been ignored for too long. The crumbling infrastructure and unforeseen consequences. As more people moved to Canada, the nation's aging infrastructure buckled under the pressure. Water main breaks, traffic gridlock, and crumbling roads became commonplace, exacerbating the housing crisis and creating new challenges for everyday Canadians. Rent and home prices soared, placing even more pressure on the population. Immigrants, many of whom had come from less developed countries, were forced into overcrowded and substandard living conditions, exacerbating tensions between newcomers and the native population. The healthcare system, which had been struggling to recover from the demands of the pandemic, was now overwhelmed by the rapid population growth. There were more people to care for, but not enough doctors or nurses to handle the demand. Many young doctors, disillusioned by the poor working conditions and long hours, chose to leave Canada for better opportunities in the United States. At the same time, Canada became one of the most indebted nations in the G7, with household debt spiraling out of control. The influx of immigrants, though necessary for Canada's economic survival, had done little to address the root causes of these problems. In fact, they had only worsened them, as the country's economic system failed to accommodate such rapid growth. The radical immigration reforms of 2024, a nation changes course. The public outcry reached its peak in 2024, forcing the Canadian government to take action. The country's leaders had no choice but to respond to the growing discontent. In what can only be described as a dramatic about-face, the federal government announced a significant reduction in immigration levels. For the first time in years, Canada implemented caps on the number of permanent residents it would accept, lowering the number by 20% and limiting the flow of temporary immigrants such as foreign workers and international students. These reforms represented the government's attempt to manage population growth and ease the strain on Canada's housing and public services. The new caps on international students and foreign workers were aimed at reducing the pressure on Canada's already stretched resources. However, these changes have sparked heated debates. While some argue that these cuts are necessary to restore balance, others worry that they may exacerbate labor shortages in critical sectors such as healthcare, agriculture, and construction. In addition to these cuts, Canada introduced new policies to address the labor market's needs more effectively. International students will now face stricter eligibility requirements, with only those studying fields aligned with Canada's labor market demands eligible for postgraduate work permits. The government also raised the minimum wage for temporary foreign workers and reintroduced caps on low-wage workers. Provincial governments, too, began adjusting their immigration policies. Quebec, for example, suspended its regular skilled worker program and graduate stream, while Ontario and British Columbia revisited their provincial nominee programs, adjusting quotas based on housing availability. What the future holds, a nation recalculates its path. As 2024 comes to a close, Canada's immigration landscape has changed dramatically. The once open doors have now been significantly narrowed. The long-standing policies that welcomed newcomers with open arms have been replaced with caution and control, in a bid to regain control over the nation's future. The reforms may provide some relief in the short term, alleviating the strain on public services and infrastructure. However, the real question is whether these measures will address the deeper, systemic issues that have led to Canada's current predicament. Without significant investments in housing, infrastructure, and technology, Canada may find itself trapped in a cycle of stagnation and frustration. As Canada moves forward, it will need to find a balance between its economic needs and the concerns of its citizens. Immigration will likely remain a crucial part of the country's future, but the government must ensure that its systems are prepared to handle the challenges that come with it. For now, Canada stands at a crossroads, uncertain about how to balance its long-standing commitment to immigration with the pressing need for internal reform. The decisions made in the coming years will shape the country's future for generations to come. The changes to Canada's immigration system in 2024 are more than just policy updates. They signal a new chapter in the country's approach to welcoming newcomers. As the government continues to refine its immigration strategies, those looking to immigrate must stay informed to navigate this evolving landscape. Whether you're a skilled worker, an international student, or a family member seeking to reunite, understanding these changes will be crucial to achieving your immigration goals in the years to come. That is all for today. In this video, what are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below.